Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode from Ampro Engineering, and in this episode we are going to do something crazy. We are going to make the KingCab and Tamiya Monster Racer keep this from falling out. I know, hardcore. The plan is we are going to remove the factory battery holding tab. For those of you not familiar, not everybody has one of these KingCabs or Monster Racers. The point of this is to flex upwards like so to allow the battery to basically slide in and snap. Get in here, snap into place. Then you want to remove it, you just pull this up and it comes out. The problem with these is if you want to remove this, you can also just do that. Therefore, this is not really the best idea. We're going to replace that with two things. First off, we have a battery door. The way this works is it's a two-piece. We install this directly over the battery retaining boss, and this is your door. This will be slid directly up, a couple body pins, done. You can install one of these on each side, but since you may not want to remove the battery from each side, we also have this cap. And the cap works the exact same way. You have the factory 2 mounting holes on both. No modifications, no cutting, no drilling, no anything is required to install these. Let's get started. The first thing we'll do is take the retainer door housing here and simply slide it on. I did want to mention that on early versions of this, I had this really tight, so you actually kind of press it in, and what ended up happening is I scratched this. Now, usually, who cares? But I know that the KingCab and Monster Racer chassis are not easy to come by, and I know that many of you, though you may run yours, may not run them very hard, kind of like me, and want to eliminate as much scratching and cosmetic blemishes as you can, so I loosened it by 0.5 millimeter, so that if you'd like, you can cover this with a piece of electric tape. I don't know what it's called all over the world, so I will show you. You can use this stuff here. And simply just run one layer over. This stuff always peels off really nicely. I mean, even 10, 15 years down the line. And any sand or grime that gets in here isn't going to chew up the finish. So I did want to point that out. With this thing in place, we're going to now put in those 2 screws. On this side, we will do the same thing. Now, just a note, because I've installed them in this particular orientation, that's meaningless. They will go on either side. So if you wanted to pull the battery from here, you can do that and put the cap on the other side, or vice versa. However, as I mentioned before, this is unnecessary. If you want to have a door on both sides, you can do that. I personally am a bit of a creature of habit, so I will usually pull it out from the other side. Same as before, we're going to go ahead and simply use our screw that came out of the existing hold downs, and notice that there is a washer there. It's always a good idea to use washer on 3D printed plastic because it helps to distribute that load. The last piece we'll install is the battery door. Always make sure that you drill out the holes for the cotter pin. Usually they are filled with support material from the 3D printing process. I used a 1.5 millimeter drill bit, or you can use the equivalent, but just make sure it's a nice small hole, just larger than the diameter of the cotter pin that you'll be using. There's a little boss here at the bottom, and if we flip this guy over here, we'll notice that there's one right there as well. What you will do is simply take this and slide it in from the bottom, push those straight through, and we'll put the cotter pins in. But before we do that, let's put our battery in. And although I'm using a nickel metal hydride, of course, this will work with a lithium polymer battery as long as it fits the geometry of the battery enclosure region. And there we have it. This is really going to take some doing. If that battery comes out, well done, sir. Well done. I don't know how you did it, but I think you'll have other problems if this battery is pulled out. So anyway, there is the battery retainer door. And here is the lockout piece. So this way it is only removed and installed from one of the 2 sides. There was one other thing I wanted to mention about these battery retainers. Due to their geometry, they actually hang about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters lower than this part of the chassis. Not lower than this, but lower than this. And initially I was concerned about that. I'm like, you land a jump and you're going to scratch these up. But then I thought, wait a minute. That's exactly what you want to scratch up. I don't want to damage this chassis. I don't want to chip the leading edges of this battery holder. I want to preserve it as best I can. Therefore, I left these a little bit low. Again, it's all about preservation of these older chassis that simply don't exist. And you can see this one here is in quite good shape, and I'd like to keep it that way. These are relatively inexpensive with respect to how much the rest of these KingCab pieces cost. So until these are re-released, this was the path that I have gone down. Thank you all for watching. I do have some other bits for the KingCab coming up. As I mentioned in the last video, you can see the front bumpers got some upgrades. And I also had a member of Tamiya Club, Conte Max, who is a simply put, he is an aficionado when it comes to the KingCab, and one of his items of complaint was these body mounts. So in closer inspection, I have discovered some pretty big weaknesses. These will be looked at very soon. So those will be coming up. In the meantime, let's look at the KingCab with its beautiful body. And while it's up, let's look at what inspired me to get this. The Taiko Bandit, for me, is one of the all-time greats of the RC car industry. I'm not even talking about, oh, it's a really good toy grade. No. Let me be very clear. I believe that this is as much of a toy as this is. To me, there's no difference here. It just so happened when most children are 7 years old in the late 90s, this is what parents give them. When they're a little bit older, then maybe this is something that they would get. However, to me, they're both toys and both magnificent ones. In fact, this thing is way more reliable than, you know what, you go hang your head in shame right now. There we go. I do have a few things coming out for the Taiko Bandit, and again, I think this is just a stunning vehicle. I've got quite a number of these, so I have some really neat projects in line for the Bandit, as well as some other things coming out for some of my older Nikos. Well, I hope you enjoyed all of this. Let's apologize to the KingCab and send him right back in here. We're sorry. It's not your fault that Tamiya didn't like you. If you are interested in the battery retaining mechanism for the KingCab, the part numbers are up on screen right now. There are 3 separate pieces that need to be ordered. Before you take off, please go ahead and add me on Instagram and Facebook. If you have not, you can stay abreast of all of these upgrades as they happen. And you can find me at Ampro Engineering on both. Also, before you take off, check out the band Blue Pinto. They, as usual, allow me to play their lovely music in all of my episodes, and a link to their Facebook is in the closing credits, as well as the link to Shapeways. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.